16 demands. That is the number currently making its way across every corner of the internet. And folks, when you see what is actually on this list, you will understand why the British public is absolutely losing their minds right now. Meghan Markle has allegedly compiled a detailed set of requirements for any potential return to the United Kingdom, and someone somewhere decided the world needed to see exactly what the Duchess of Sussex expects when she graces British soil with her presence. The leak is being called the most embarrassing royal revelation in years, and honestly, that might be an understatement. Let us be brutally honest here. We have seen royal scandals before. We have witnessed uncomfortable interviews and cringeworthy public relations disasters. But this is something else entirely. The demands allegedly outlined in this leaked document have left palace insiders describing themselves as utterly disgusted by the sheer audacity on display. One source close to the situation put it bluntly when they said they have seen entitlement before, but this takes it to an entirely new level. And when you start digging into the specifics, you will understand exactly why that reaction is not hyperbole. The most outrageous demand that immediately caught everyone's attention involves security arrangements that would make a sitting head of state blush. We are talking about protection protocols that allegedly exceed what the Prime Minister receives. We are talking about taxpayer resources being requested by someone who publicly declared they wanted nothing to do with royal life and then sued the very country she now expects to foot the bill. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a knife, and social media has absolutely not let that contradiction slide. Palace insiders are reportedly furious, and honestly, can you blame them? One source described the internal reaction as a mixture of disbelief and barely contained rage. Another insider revealed that when senior members of the household saw what was being demanded, there was genuine laughter followed by genuine concern about how disconnected from reality these requests appeared. The consensus inside palace walls is apparently unanimous. These demands expose a fundamental misunderstanding of how the system works, or perhaps more accurately, a refusal to accept that Meghan no longer has any claim to its privileges. The public response has been equally savage. Within hours of the leak going viral, the list was being dissected, mocked, and shared millions of times across every platform imaginable. Commentary sections exploded with reactions ranging from stunned disbelief to outright mockery. Royal correspondents who typically maintain a measured tone have been unusually direct in their assessments, with several calling this the most self-inflicted wound in modern royal history. And the full list reveals a pattern that exposes something deeply telling about Meghan's true priorities, something that goes far beyond mere security concerns. The story of how this list allegedly surfaced reads like something out of a political thriller, and the circumstances surrounding the leak have only added fuel to an already raging fire. Sources indicate that Prince Harry has been quietly attempting to negotiate terms for potential UK returns over the past several months, desperately trying to find some pathway back to his homeland that does not involve complete capitulation. But insiders claim that while Harry has been extending olive branches, Meghan has been pulling strings behind the scenes in ways that have complicated every single conversation. The leaked document reportedly originated from palace sources, though the exact chain of custody remains unclear. What is clear is that someone with intimate knowledge of the ongoing negotiations decided that public exposure was necessary. One source familiar with the situation suggested that the leak was intentional, designed to show the British people exactly what they would be funding if these demands were ever met. Another insider described it as a warning shot across the bow, a clear message that certain expectations will never be entertained regardless of who is making them. What makes this leak particularly devastating is the timing. Reports of marriage tension between Harry and Meghan have been circulating for months, with sources describing a husband increasingly desperate to reconnect with his homeland and his family. Harry has allegedly been exploring options for solo visits, trying to find ways to maintain his British connections while navigating the complicated reality of his California life. And then this list emerges, exposing alleged demands that go far beyond anything Harry has been publicly pursuing. The demands touch on status, treatment, and royal privileges that Meghan herself publicly rejected when the couple announced their departure in 2020. Allow me to translate what that means. She allegedly wants access to a system she spent years criticizing, privileges she denounced as oppressive, and treatment she claimed was destroying her mental health. The contradiction is not lost on anyone, and insiders say the hypocrisy has not gone unnoticed within palace walls. One source close to the royal family described it as wanting to have your cake, eat it too, and then demand a second cake just in case. For those unfamiliar with royal protocol, let me explain why these demands are particularly inflammatory. When working members of the royal family return to the UK, their arrangements are determined by the institution based on necessity and precedent. They do not submit wish lists. They do not make demands. They work within a system that has operated for centuries. The idea that a non-working former member would present a detailed list of requirements has reportedly left protocol experts absolutely baffled. but the specific demands on this list have left even those who previously sympathized with the Sussexes completely speechless. The first category of demands involves security arrangements that would make international diplomats raise their eyebrows, and folks, when I tell you the specifics, you will understand why palace insiders are using words like delusional to describe what is being requested. According to the leaked information, Meghan has allegedly outlined requirements for armed protection that would rival arrangements made for visiting heads of state. We are not talking about reasonable precautions. We are talking about full motorcade protocols, advanced security sweeps, and taxpayer-funded protection that would cost British citizens millions. Let that sink in for a moment. This is the same woman who declared she could not possibly remain in the United Kingdom because of the constraints of royal life. This is the same woman who cited the institution's inability to protect her as a primary reason for leaving. And now, allegedly, she wants protection protocols that exceed what she received when she was actually a working royal. Sources claim the specific requests include armed officers, dedicated protection teams, and security arrangements that would effectively shut down portions of whichever city she happens to be visiting. One insider put it with devastating clarity when they said she wants taxpayer-funded protection despite suing the country and publicly trashing everything it stands for. And they are absolutely right. The same woman who authorized her husband to pursue legal action against the British government over security arrangements is allegedly demanding that same government provide protection that would make the Secret Service look understaffed. The audacity is genuinely staggering. The irony of this particular demand category cannot be overstated. The couple famously left the royal family citing privacy concerns and the alleged unbearable nature of constant media attention. They moved to California specifically to escape the spotlight, to live a quieter life, to raise their children away from the circus. And yet these security demands would guarantee maximum visibility. Motorcades attract attention, armed protection teams draw cameras. The very measures allegedly being requested would ensure that every single UK visit becomes a media spectacle of the highest order. Royal security experts have been blunt in their assessments. One former protection officer told media outlets that these requests demonstrate a fundamental lack of understanding about how security actually works and who actually qualifies for such measures. Another source within the security apparatus described the demands as unprecedented for anyone outside the immediate working royal family or senior government officials. The consensus among those who actually understand these systems is that the requests are not just excessive, they are completely disconnected from reality. But security was just the beginning of this eye-opening document, and her accommodation demands are even more shocking than what we have already discussed. Sources claim Meghan has specific requirements about where she would stay during any UK visit, and the details being reported would be hilarious if they were not apparently serious. According to the leaked information, the Duchess allegedly has demands regarding royal residences that extend well beyond mere comfort preferences. We are talking about suite specifications that would require significant modifications, staff arrangements that would rival what is provided to the monarch, and requirements so detailed that one insider described the document as reading like a 5-star hotel inspection checklist, written by someone who has never actually stayed in a 5-star hotel. The alleged demand that has particularly raised eyebrows involves a reported insistence on not staying at properties where certain family members might be present. Let us be clear about what that means. Sources suggest Meghan has allegedly requested arrangements that would essentially guarantee she never has to encounter specific royals during her visits. The practical implications of this are enormous. It would require the royal family to coordinate their schedules around Meghan's preferences, essentially giving a non-working former member veto power over who can be where and when. Historical context makes these demands even more absurd. When foreign dignitaries visit the United Kingdom, their accommodations are determined by the host country based on appropriate protocol and available resources. Heads of state do not submit detailed requirements about thread counts and room dimensions. Even senior members of other royal families accept the arrangements made for them with grace and appreciation. The idea that Meghan would allegedly submit a list of specifications that exceeds what is provided to visiting presidents and prime ministers has left protocol experts genuinely stunned. One source close to the situation described the accommodation demands as being written by someone who has completely lost touch with how the real world operates. Another insider was even more direct, suggesting that the level of detail in these requirements reveals someone who is deeply unhappy with every aspect of their life and is projecting that dissatisfaction onto everyone around them. The staff arrangements allegedly requested would require dozens of additional personnel, including specific requirements about who can and cannot interact with the Duchess directly. For those keeping score at home, we are now looking at demands that would require British taxpayers to fund security rivaling a head of state, accommodate requirements exceeding what is provided to foreign dignitaries, and coordinate household schedules around the preferences of someone who publicly abandoned her royal duties. Each individual demand might be irritating on its own. Combined, they paint a picture that has left even Meghan's remaining supporters struggling to mount a defense. But it is the demands about her public treatment that have truly stunned observers and exposed something that cannot be easily explained away. The leaked list allegedly includes demands about how Meghan must be addressed and positioned at any events she might attend. And folks, this is where the document goes from merely outrageous to genuinely bewildering. According to sources who have seen the reported requirements, Meghan has allegedly specified how she expects to be introduced at functions, what her ceremonial placement should be relative to other attendees, and what titles she expects to be used when referring to her in official contexts. Remember, this is a woman who voluntarily gave up her working royal status. Let me translate what these demands actually mean in practical terms. Royal protocol is extremely specific about precedence and positioning. Working members of the family have their placement determined by a clear hierarchy that has evolved over centuries. When Harry and Meghan stepped back, they stepped out of that hierarchy. Their position at events, if they attend at all, is now fundamentally different from what it was when they were working royals. And yet the alleged demands suggest Meghan expects to maintain positioning and treatment that she is simply no longer entitled to receive. The reported demand about photo opportunities is particularly telling. Sources claim the document includes specifications about media access and image control that would give Meghan effective veto power over how she is photographed and presented at public events. One insider described this requirement as wanting to control the narrative so completely that reality itself must bend to accommodate her preferences. Another source was more blunt, suggesting that someone who complains about media intrusion while simultaneously demanding specific photographic arrangements might need to look up the definition of hypocrisy. One quote from a reported insider has been circulating widely since the leak, and it perfectly encapsulates the reaction within royal circles. The source allegedly stated that she wants all the privileges she publicly rejected. 8 words that cut straight to the heart of what makes these demands so inflammatory. Meghan spent years criticizing the institution, accusing it of racism, suggesting it was responsible for her mental health struggles, and painting the royal family as villains in a narrative where she was the victim. And now she allegedly wants the benefits of that same institution without any of the responsibilities. The public treatment demands also reportedly include requirements about how other attendees should interact with her, essentially creating a set of rules that would govern how British subjects must behave in her presence. Royal experts have pointed out that such requirements are typically reserved for the monarch and, in modified forms, senior working royals. The suggestion that a non-working former member would demand similar treatment has been described by one correspondent as being so far removed from reality that it would be funny if it were not so genuinely concerning. When Harry reportedly saw the public reaction to these revelations, sources say his response was immediate and devastating. Insiders claim Harry's reaction to the leak has exposed cracks in the Sussex foundation that run far deeper than anyone previously suspected, and the picture emerging from Montecito is genuinely alarming. According to sources close to the situation, when Harry discovered that Meghan's alleged demands had been made public, his initial response was described as complete disbelief, followed by what one insider called an emotional unraveling that lasted for days. The prince reportedly spent hours attempting to process not just the leak itself, but what it revealed about how his wife's approach differs so dramatically from his own. Let us be clear about the impossible position Harry now finds himself in. He wants to return to the United Kingdom. He wants to rebuild relationships with his family. He wants to be present for important moments and maintain his connection to his homeland. But according to insiders, every attempt he has made to negotiate reasonable terms has been complicated by demands he was not entirely aware were being communicated behind the scenes. One source described Harry as genuinely blindsided by some of the specifics in the leaked document, suggesting that the full scope of Meghan's requirements had not been transparently shared with him. Reports of marriage tensions have been circulating for months, but this leak has allegedly intensified those concerns dramatically. Sources describe Harry as trapped between two worlds with no clear path forward in either direction. He cannot return to the United Kingdom under conditions the royal family will never accept. He cannot abandon his wife and children in California, and he cannot seemingly find any middle ground that satisfies everyone involved. One insider put it devastatingly when they said he looked like a man who has finally realized there is no solution that makes everyone happy, and he is the only one who cannot walk away. Harry's mental state has reportedly deteriorated significantly since the leak became public. Sources describe anxiety, anger, and a profound sense of being unable to control anything happening around him. The man who once seemed confident in his decision to leave royal life now allegedly spends hours ruminating on what might have been and what could still be if circumstances were different. Friends have reportedly expressed concern about his emotional well-being, with one describing him as more isolated than he has ever been. The emotional complexity of this situation cannot be overstated. Harry reportedly genuinely loves his wife and is committed to his family, but that commitment apparently comes with conditions he never anticipated and requirements he never agreed to. The leaked demands have allegedly forced him to confront questions about his marriage that he has been avoiding, questions about agency, transparency, and whether his own desires for reconciliation have ever been a genuine priority. Palace sources say the royal family's response to these demands was swift and brutal, and what they allegedly communicated has closed doors that may never reopen. King Charles and palace officials have allegedly made their position so crystal clear that there is no room for interpretation, and the response being reported demonstrates just how far the Sussexes have fallen in royal estimation. According to sources within the palace, the leaked demands were dismissed almost immediately as what one insider called non-starters, so absurd they barely warranted a response. Another source described senior officials reviewing the document with expressions that alternated between disbelief and barely suppressed laughter at the sheer audacity on display. The reported royal response has been methodical and uncompromising. Sources claim that formal channels have communicated to Sussex representatives that none of the alleged demands will be entertained, now or ever. The security requirements have been described as completely out of the question. The accommodation specifications have been labeled as inappropriate for someone of her current status. And the protocol demands have allegedly been dismissed as demonstrating a fundamental misunderstanding of how the monarchy actually functions. One insider summarized the palace position in 3 words that say everything that needs to be said: absolutely not happening. Prince William's alleged reaction deserves particular attention because it reportedly encapsulates how far the brotherly relationship has deteriorated. Sources close to the heir claim that when William was informed of the specific demands, his response was to find the entire situation laughable in the most devastating sense of that word. Not amusing, not entertaining, but so divorced from reality that laughter was the only possible response. One insider suggested that William views the leaked demands as confirmation of everything he has suspected about his sister-in-law's true priorities. The recent invitation to King Charles for the Invictus Games has been completely recontextualized by this leak. What was initially presented as an olive branch, a genuine attempt at reconciliation, is now being viewed by palace sources as little more than a public relations rehabilitation attempt. One insider suggested that the timing of that invitation, coming just weeks before this damaging leak, indicates that the Sussexes may have known this information was coming out and were attempting to preemptively soften the narrative. If that was the strategy, it has failed spectacularly. Palace sources have been unusually direct in their assessments of what this leak means for future relations. The word being used most frequently is trust, or more accurately, the complete absence of it. One senior source allegedly stated that any negotiation requires good faith, and this document demonstrates there is no good faith to be found. Another insider was more pointed, suggesting that these demands prove the Sussexes view the royal family as a resource to be exploited rather than a family to be reconciled with. But the public humiliation was only beginning to unfold, and what happened when ordinary British citizens saw this list has been absolutely merciless. Social media erupted when the list went viral, and the commentary from ordinary British citizens has been so savage that even seasoned royal watchers have been taken aback by the intensity. Within hours of the leak becoming public, the specific demands were being dissected, mocked, and turned into content that has been viewed hundreds of millions of times across every platform imaginable. Hashtags related to Meghan's demands trended worldwide for 3 consecutive days, and the overwhelming majority of commentary has been scathingly negative. The public response has taken several distinct forms, each more devastating than the last. Some users have created detailed breakdowns comparing Meghan's alleged requirements to what is provided for actual heads of state, demonstrating just how inflated her expectations apparently are. Others have compiled timelines showing her previous statements about wanting privacy and independence, placing them alongside these demands for maximum visibility and taxpayer support. The contradiction between her public statements and her alleged private requirements has been highlighted relentlessly, and no amount of public relations spin can make that hypocrisy disappear. Media commentary from UK outlets has been particularly pointed. Royal correspondents who typically maintain professional neutrality have been unusually direct in their assessments. One prominent commentator described the demands as the kind of thing you would expect from someone who has watched too many movies about royalty and learned nothing about reality. Another suggested that these requirements reveal someone who fundamentally misunderstands the nature of the institution she claims to have escaped from. The consensus among royal experts is that this leak represents a turning point in public perception, one that will be very difficult to reverse. Polls conducted since the leak have shown public opinion turning even further against the Sussexes, something many observers thought was impossible given how negative sentiment already was. One survey indicated that over 80% of British respondents believe Meghan should receive no special treatment during any UK visits. Another poll found that support for taxpayer-funded security for the couple has dropped to single digits. The numbers tell a story that cannot be spun or reframed. The British public has made their position absolutely clear. Perhaps most damaging has been the response from people who previously identified as Sussex supporters. Comments from those who once defended the couple have been circulating widely, with many expressing feelings of betrayal and embarrassment. One former supporter wrote that they had believed Meghan wanted to escape celebrity culture, not demand more of it. Another suggested that these demands prove everything critics said was accurate. When your own supporters turn against you this dramatically, you know something fundamental has shifted. Insiders say this leak reveals something even more significant about Meghan's true feelings about the life she chose to leave behind. Sources close to the situation claim these demands actually reveal something Meghan has been unwilling to admit publicly, and the psychology on display is genuinely fascinating. According to insiders, the specific nature of these requirements suggests a deep and abiding regret about leaving royal life, a regret that apparently manifests in demanding access to everything she publicly rejected. One source put it bluntly when they suggested that you do not make demands for something you genuinely do not want. These requests prove she misses it desperately. The connection to recent reports about Meghan allegedly wanting back into the royal fold suddenly makes complete sense. For months, sources have suggested that Meghan has been quietly exploring pathways to reintegration, testing whether doors she slammed shut might still be reopened. The leaked demands, viewed through this lens, represent not entitlement but desperation. She allegedly wants the status, the treatment, and the recognition that come with royal life because, according to insiders, she has realized that life outside the institution is not what she expected it to be. Analyzing the psychology behind these demands reveals someone trapped by their own narrative. Meghan spent years publicly criticizing the royal family, accusing them of racism, insensitivity, and institutional cruelty. She cannot now admit that she misses what she left behind without undermining everything she has said. So instead, according to sources, she allegedly makes demands that would recreate the royal experience without requiring her to acknowledge that she wants it. The mental gymnastics required to maintain this position must be absolutely exhausting. The reported tension this revelation has caused in Montecito has been significant. Sources claim Harry feels manipulated by the situation, trapped between his wife's apparent desire to have royal privileges restored and his own understanding that such restoration is impossible under current circumstances. One insider described recent conversations between the couple as featuring a level of honesty that has been avoided for years, honesty that is apparently not going well for anyone involved. Another source suggested that Harry is finally confronting the possibility that the life Meghan described wanting and the life she actually wants may be two very different things. The desperation allegedly driving these demands extends beyond mere status considerations. Sources suggest Meghan has been struggling with her identity outside the royal framework, uncertain of who she is when not defined by her connection to the monarchy. The Netflix projects have underperformed. The podcast was canceled. The lifestyle brand exists primarily as a concept rather than a reality. Without the royal connection, insiders claim she has discovered that her celebrity has limits she apparently finds unacceptable. The question now is whether the Sussex brand can survive this level of exposure, and the answer emerging from industry insiders is not encouraging. The devastating impact of this leak cannot be overstated, and what we are witnessing is the systematic unraveling of a carefully constructed narrative that has been years in the making. Every statement about wanting privacy, every declaration about seeking independence, every criticism of royal privilege has been undermined by a single document that allegedly shows exactly what Meghan wants when she thinks no one is watching. The credibility damage is immense, and public relations experts are suggesting it may be irreparable. The future implications for Harry's UK visits are now genuinely uncertain. Sources indicate that any travel to Britain will now be viewed through the lens of this leak, with every security arrangement and accommodation scrutinized against the backdrop of these alleged demands. Harry may find himself in the impossible position of having to publicly distance himself from his wife's reported requirements, a position that would create its own set of devastating consequences. One insider suggested that every visit from this point forward will be shadowed by questions about what was asked for and what was refused. The strain on the marriage appears to be reaching critical levels. Multiple sources have suggested that the combination of professional failures, public humiliation, and the exposure of alleged demands has created tensions that cannot be easily resolved. One insider described the current situation as unsustainable, suggesting that something fundamental will have to change in the coming months. Whether that change involves the marriage, the location, or the public strategy remains to be seen, but the status quo apparently cannot continue. This leak represents the latest in a series of self-inflicted wounds that have characterized the Sussex brand since their departure from royal life. The Oprah interview created controversy. The Netflix documentary generated backlash. The memoir produced legal complications. And now this leaked document has exposed alleged hypocrisy that validates every criticism that has been leveled against them. The pattern is unmistakable. Every attempt to control the narrative somehow ends up making things worse. So the question I want to put to all of you watching is this: do you think Meghan's demands prove she regrets leaving royal life? Or is this really about maintaining control over a situation that has spiraled beyond her ability to manage? Drop your thoughts below. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned. The next video is waiting, and you will not believe what is coming next.